So first of all, a big welcome and thank you so much to all of you who's joining. Um, it's super great that you are so adaptable and kind of switching to this online webinar in these crazy circumstances that we have at the moment in Denmark. But we'd love to have seen you all in person, but under the circumstances, we are very happy that you're joining here for sure. We have some very exciting things to talk about today. We'll talk about the value of creativity, why it still matters, why TV is still a crucial media to use, especially now where effect is so important. And then at the end, we will have some tips on how to evaluate your campaign using research. So we'll have some really great presenters to you. First of all, Arnaud Dibia, who is the Global Creative Development Director at Ipsos. Very excited to hear what he has to say. And then Henrik, PhD and Managing Director at Brands & Co., and also a writer of a very interesting book that I'm sure you'll hear more about in just a while. So I'll try and give the control to you, Arnaud, and then maybe you can unmute and then take it from here.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for the great introduction, Alexander, and good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you. So let me see if I have control. Yes, it looks like I have control. Fantastic. I love when technology works. So let me click through, and I can move the slides as well. So that's fantastic. So really happy to be with you today, although it's due to the circumstances through Teams, but it shows that technology can work and that we can still connect together. And what I would like to kick us off with is to speak about creativity, why creativity matters, which was the initial topic of the presentation, which is even so more important today given the circumstances, because we will speak as well about why creativity in this situation still matters and is important. So the first thing that we're planning on telling you before the crisis is that we know as researchers, but also as creativity enthusiasts, that creativity is super important. And that's why our communication research arm is called Creative Excellence. That means that we know that creativity for our clients and excellence in creativity is a great driver of business. So a lot of people have recognized that. A lot of companies have recognized that, including Ipsos. So here we just put a few evidences which are outside of Ipsos world. So just leveraging a quote from a former CMO of Unilever, Keith Weed, who just stated that creative work, which is more memorable, more effective, and more able, will be more able to drive business performance. So is very true, and that's very true. If you look at loads of pieces of research, Ipsos pieces of research, but also outside pieces of research, such as the work from the IPA, which is the British Board of Advertising Agencies, they've proven basically that creatively awarded work, like in the Cannes Lions Creativity Festival, is likely to drive market share gains a lot more, 11 times more than work that has not been creatively awarded. So creativity matters and creative effectiveness matters. And when you think about creativity, when you think even of you as a consumer, I'm sure that there are some pieces of advertising, some pieces of creative that come top of mind. One of the pieces of creative that comes top of mind from me, as I'm French, is a campaign which is 30 years old from Perrier. Perrier, which is, I'm sure you know, this French sparkling water brand, where basically a woman was fighting in the desert in Africa against a lion for a bottle of Perrier, and was beating the lion because the irresistibility of the drink and her thirst were, way stronger than the ferocious cry of the lion. And that's very much, an example for me, but I'm sure you have examples of your mind of great pieces of creative. And that's, what we all love about creativity. Huh? Creativity inspires you, it engages you, and it serves the brand. It serves the brand because if you have a strong piece of creative, it will drive your attention, which is more and more important these days with all these numerous pieces of content, these numerous channels that we have. And it will bring you closer to the brand, affect the way you behave towards the brand, and help you choose the brand and choose the brand more. And that's something that we have spoken a lot in details. For example, in that paper that you have on the screen, be bold, be creative, and by the way, do research, which is also or we help brands do stronger creative. And if you have the time, I just encourage you to have a read there. So creativity matters. Now, would you say that creativity still matter in the times of coronavirus? And quite a few of our clients have been asking us, should they continue communicating? Should they stop their campaigns? Should they go dark? And if they go communicating, what should we do? I'll try to explain why we believe it's still important to communicate and try to give you a few tips, an overview of how. The first thing is that if you look at what some marketers have said during these times, they do say that there's a clear case for brands continuing to communicate. So Mr. Mark Ritson, which I'm sure a lot of you know, who is a marketing academic, has written a couple of weeks ago in Marketing Week that brands should keep on communicating because just the cost of stopping communication is gigantic, and you need to keep a connection with people, with your consumers, even in these times, even if your services are not that relevant. There's another gentleman, Mr. Harmoning, who is a CMO of General Mills, who believes that it's actually the duty of brands to keep on acting, to keep on communicating, to keep on delivering their products, because advertising and marketing will bring a sense of normalcy in a world that has gone anything but normal and where he expects people to demand that. So that's what they think, and we just wanted to be sure as researchers that it is true. So we conducted some research in key markets across the world, and I'll just show you a few pieces of evidence that just support that, and from a research that we conducted recently in the US. So the first thing is that effectively people expect brands to stand by their side, and they don't expect them to go dark. So in that first set of results, if you look at the blue bars, which represents the top two box on these questions, people majoritarily want to hear from helpful brands. They want companies to support during the coronavirus crisis. They want to hear from brands help navigate through the crisis, and they want to continue to hear from brands and what they offer, what is their products and services. So clearly, there's a case for communication. And when you think about it, and when you think about what Mr. Harmoning was saying, or if you think about the past crisis, let alone take World War II or the mad cow crisis, brands have stood by people's side and they were there to bring that sense of normalcy. And if we look at another question that we ask people, which is what they expect communication and advertising to make them feel like, here you have two types of big messages that people expect. First of all, messages which help them feel more secure, more safe, more normal, more reassured. Secondly, messages that will drive positivity, give them comfort in these times which are a bit troubled. So clearly, the brands, they have a role to play. People ask them to take a role. If we look at what brands in China did, for example, so we discussed a couple of weeks ago with our Chinese colleagues, and they shared with us two great examples of how brands were communicating during the peak of the crisis a month and a half back. And here on the left-hand side, you have an example from IKEA. And IKEA is very relevant in these times because you spend so much time in their home, and they wanted to bring some positivism out of the crisis. And here on that visual of this young executive working at home, it says, "My parents had never seen how I look at work. Now they do." So it's great for parents to see how their kid is working, and they can see their kid at work because everyone was working from home. Or if you take the visuals on the right-hand side, which might look a bit cryptic, basically these visuals are showing what Yili, which is a dairy milk brand, what they did. And basically what they did is that they sent to doctors and nurses in Wuhan a set of carton holders that normally they have on their packs, because these carton holders can be recycled to be used to hold the masks. And I've tried and tried to wear a mask for 20 hours a day, you know that it will hurt your ears. So that way, it was bringing instant relief to the medical staff. And of course, they also spoke about it and showed how they could support. If we look to now what's happening in other parts of the world, like the US, so a lot of brands are communicating. I know that in Denmark, a lot of brands are communicating around the virus, just showing that they care, which is, for example, this example of Burger King, or what Coke did, and, speaking about social distanciation and explaining that staying apart is the best way to stay united, which worked quite well for Coke. McDonald's, interestingly, they tried a bit of the same trick, tweaking the logo, but being a lot more cryptic about it. And because they were more cryptic, they were tasked with the fact that they were a bit too negative and maybe trying to be too opportunistic. So what's interesting is that the same kind of creative idea, in one sense for Coke worked, for McDonald's didn't work, because Coke managed to find the right way to express it and to explain their purpose, which McDonald's didn't do enough. So interesting cases where, of course, you can communicate, but the right message, the right tone matters. And speaking about tones, I would just like to share with you a great example of what we believe a brand did during that crisis in Italy to communicate and to communicate in a positive tone about the crisis.
Vodafone Giga Network was born to unite. Every day we work to make it more reliable and powerful. Because even when we can't be close, we can be together.
So a very nice and positive message to Italians who, of course, rely a lot as well on technology to connect together in these times, and a very interesting campaign, which is playing on one of the key demands of people that we've seen, which is driving positivism. So all in all, and we could speak with the new Facebook ad, for example, which has been out just 2 days ago, which kind of plays on the same idea with a slightly lot of cases of brands communicating and showing that creativity still matters and connecting to people, showing that the brands stand by their sides, that they support and they are here to bring escapism, that they are here to bring enjoyment, is something that is key. So in that respect, what we believe is that quite a few of the creativity trends that were discussed in Cannes last year are still very relevant. And what I would like to share with you now is three of these trends around creativity of what was discussed in Cannes last year, which still make a lot of sense and still matter in these coronavirus times. Maybe just one thing I forgot to mention before is that if you want to read more about the coronavirus crisis and how creativity or communication can help brands, we've just published an article on it, so you'll find the link as well to that article in that presentation, and we'll be able to share separately. So let's move back now to Cannes, 2019 summer, all sunny, but still very interesting trends that were discussed. The first trend out there is how content is back in the center of the focus of advertisers, and by content we mean the creative content, the creative stories. And here we just illustrate that by, the rise of entertainment content that we see in the fight between Disney Plus and Netflix. So why do we mean that there is a shift back or a focus back on content? It's because in the last years in Cannes, a lot of the talk, a lot of the focus was around digital platform, new technologies, new channels, and the importance of creative content, of ideas, of storytelling was a bit lost. But not this year. There's been a huge focus back on creativity and how it matters. And that's something that we know quite well within Ipsos, that actually the content is what matters, because you can have all the channels you want, all the technology platforms that you want, all the touch points that you want. A lot of the impact is actually coming from the quality of the content that you have. So in our tracking studies, we've identified that this share is around 75%. Some of our friends at Nielsen or AP would say 62 to 65, but that's more of the general idea. The majority of your creativity impact comes from creative content. So in that respect, it's no surprise that a lot of great campaigns which were awarded in Cannes were winning thanks to great content. So I won't play that ad for you, but this John Lewis commercial for Christmas, leveraging the story of Elton John, is a fantastic piece of storytelling. So I hope that offline, if you haven't seen it, you'll get the time to watch it. And even campaigns which do rely on playing on technology, on platforms, made sure that at the center of their campaigns, of their multi-touchpoint activations, there was a strong ID. And Burger King, with that campaign, just made sure that their tonality, their spirit of trolling McDonald's was present across all the touchpoints. And let's have a look at that campaign, which has been a great winner in Cannes this year.
Burger King wants you to come here. Yes to McDonald's.
Burger King
is trolling
its fast food rival.
So I saw this Burger King commercial where you can get a Whopper for a penny.
Only if you open the app while you're at McDonald's.
That doesn't even make sense. You have to go to McDonald's for a Whopper?
And use Burger King BK app.
Then be within 600 feet of a McDonald's restaurant.
Leveraging geolocation technology.
It's called the Whopper Detour.
Whopper Detour.
All right, so I'm currently at McDonald's right here.
Let's go for the unlock.
You unlocked the Whopper Detour.
This is a really cool promo, guys. How fun is this?
Nice. That's funny.
That's crazy.
Whopper? Okay, where's the Burger King?
Like 4 blocks to your left.
Okay, so great campaign. So you could debate a bit about some of it, and in my section. An important trend that we could witness in Cannes, which is very important, especially these days, is that brands more and more are moving towards purpose-led communication and brand activism. Let me explain first why. Why? It's because I'm sure a lot of you know that consumers are also citizens, and more they consume being a bit of the citizens that they are as well. So if we poll people and we look at a few facts here, we do see that a lot of people say and believe that the brands that will be the most successful will make a positive contribution to society. Some people declare, it's not always the case, but that they would switch to brands based on social issues. And a lot of brands, have started to be working on their communication, going beyond what their products and service offer, but communicate a purpose. Example of that in the last year was Nike with their Dream Crazy campaign, reinventing the just do it motto and putting a bit more purpose into that. But there's a kind of an accented trend which exists, which is brand activism. And brand activism basically is just to make sure that your brand, beyond saying, is first of all acting and doing what's good, regardless of any communication or marketing strategy. And here is a great example from 3 brands: Gazeta, Mastercard, and BNP Paribas in Poland.
In the most recent Gender Equality Index, Poland scored 10 points below the EU average.
They are weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent.
Our traditional culture has objectified and marginalized women for years. Due to the lack of formal sex education, entire generations of Polish men learned about women from this. Your Weekend, our country's longest running and most iconic porn magazine. We wanted to start a conversation with all those brought up on Your Weekend's biased portrayal of women. So we bought it. On 2019 International Women's Day, we teamed up Gazeta PL, BNP Paribas and Mastercard, brands that have a long-term commitment of empowering women, and created Your Weekend's last ever issue. An issue that challenges sexism and misogyny. The cover featured an emerging writer, an acclaimed actress, and a mixed martial arts world champion. Inside, we kept the magazine's original sections, but reimagined their content. Leading Polish female photographers offered a diverse portrayal of womanhood. Stories, essays, and interviews explored the subject of gender equality. Nationwide, offline and online sales were supported by an integrated campaign. We ignited a fierce debate by sending hundreds of copies to journalists and influencers. It made the last ever issue the best-selling issue of the magazine in 10 years. In a country that shames women and where sexual education has been deemed too risky to teach in schools, we took charge of the conversation. We transformed the magazine's social channels into a long-term education platform for sexuality and gender issues. Because no one should ever learn about women from a porn magazine.
So here, as you can see, very much the idea is to first of all, act for defending the image of women, not trying to push the brand. But by the way, of course, that's very positive for Gazeta. That's very positive for BNP and Mastercard. So if you want to read more about purpose-led communication and why brands should take a stand, you would see a link here. I don't know if that's true for you, but there's a bit of echo, so I hope it's not too painful for you. It's a bit painful for me, but I'll try to carry on. So the last trend that we witnessed in Cannes is some people thinking that creativity was in crisis. And these people actually are the ones who normally advocate creativity, which is the IPA, the Board of British Advertising Agency I was speaking of. And what they found out is that in the way they measure effectiveness of their campaign, they found that the effectiveness of campaigns was dropping. So they were asking, you know, is creativity in crisis, and what should we do about it? So let's try and understand why, with a mix from reasons that they use to explain why, and first of all, a reason which we know at Ipsos, and that a lot of people know, is that when you think about people and the way today they consume content and advertising in particular, there's a drop in their attention, and we have to be that. So here you have some figures which show that across many different countries or norms for TV recognition, so ads ability to get your attention is significantly dropping. And the key culprit is what I was mentioning earlier: more content, watch devices.
Hey, Anna.
Yes.
The echo is really bad, so maybe we can try switch the sound on and off again.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
Right, 1 second. I'll just I'll see if I can unmute everybody again, and then you can just or mute everybody, and then you can unmute yourself, Anu.
Yes, I think that's better now, right?
Much
all right.
Yes, it
Looks
works
like
now.
better. Okay, thank you. So that's much better for me as well. So clearly there's a question of attention. The second bit is something that the IPA has identified, is that there's a drop in investment, certainly as well because marketing budgets and communication budgets are more spread, and that's impacting both what they track, which is non-awarded and creatively awarded work, and maybe we are reaching a level of investment which is a bit too low. And the last thing that the IPA identifies is that there's too much of a focus on campaigns which have short-term effects, and when a campaign has just short-term effects, it doesn't build the brand so much on the long term, while long-term effects campaigns, the campaigns which aim to build brands in the long term, do have short-term and long-term effects. So that is certainly an explanation as well. And if you think about the Whopper Detour, which is a fantastic idea, it's very much geared towards short term. So one question you could ask is what it is building for Burger King as a brand. But the good thing is that we know from a lot of cases in Cannes and from cases from our clients like ACT that creativity still matters and can drive business effectiveness. And this wonderful campaign, which actually started in the Nordics, Viva la Vulva from ACT, has earned the brand, in just less than 2 months, 33% market share on a new category with very disruptive pieces of content, and that just show you a version that you will never see, or maybe are less likely to see, which is the French version of it.
You're so rare, so fine. I'm so glad you're mine. We've come a long way together. You're so fine. Through the hard times and the good.
Découvrez la nouvelle gamme Nana Pure Sensitive. Avec serviettes et protège-lingerie, sans allergène courant, sans colorant, ni parfum. Nana, osez tout.
So just there, everything. So creativity still matters. And now with my friend Henrik, we are going to see how TV still matters.
Yes, and I'll just give the control to you, Henrik, and apologize for the bit of technical glitches here, but it wouldn't be Corona times without it, I guess.
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you, Arnaud. As we saw with the Vodafone case from Italy, great creativity delivered on TV still matters, and that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about. First, a little bit about myself. I have a background from the world of media agencies, where I've been CEO for 10 years. And when you turn 50, something strange happens, at least to some of us. In my case, it was taking a PhD degree. So for 4 years, I studied how the digital era is impacting the business models for TV broadcasters, for agencies, but also for advertisers. And what I have done is that I've done some academic work. You can see that on the right side of the slide, but also some practical work on the left side. And in the bottom left corner is the book that I will talk about today. The book was launched in Denmark in November last year, and hopefully in June this year, it will be available in Norway as well. An English translation of the title would be something like TV Still Matters. On the back cover of the book, it says that the return on investments in media and marketing has decreased in the digital era. And the cause for that is that digital media has resulted in way too much tactical marketing. So maybe as advertisers, we have underestimated the importance of branding and thus creativity, but also the strengths of TV advertising. That's at least a conclusion from more than 50 studies that are used in the book. It's not a I have all the right answers book. It's more targeted at advertisers that wants evidence-based input to how they can outperform competition in their category. And if you haven't noticed, we have entered into a recession, and I'm currently reviewing 40 academic articles, a little bit more than 40 academic articles and reports on advertising in recession. And as Arnaud said earlier, and it supports what he said, is that all the studies basically say the same: do not stop advertising. You will never in your days see a bigger return of your media investments than you see during. The key arguments within the literature is that both competitive clutters and media pricing are lower. According to the studies, the biggest barrier for rational behavior among advertisers is the CEO. They know too little about how marketing works, so if you are to buy shares again someday, then make sure you do it in companies where the CEO, he knows his marketing stuff. One thing that CEOs, they do understand that sales, and if you want to drive sales with your media, you need television. In the book, I present 6 recent reviews or studies with more than 7,500 sales models. And they all say the same: TV is best in driving sales. On the slide, you see one of the studies. That's a study from the UK of 1,954 campaigns. You can read about them in this report, Profitability, the Business Case for Advertising from 2018. And what they say here, or their results, is that TV is best in driving sales in both short term, that is within the 3 to 6 months, and long term up to 3 years. During my PhD days, I did a study on what is the biggest marketing challenge for advertisers. And the conclusion was that it is to find the right media mix. So what I would like to do is to talk about 2 types of mixes, the mix of media groups and the mix between branding and activation. The slide I showed you before with the sales effects from different media is reflecting the real life campaign structure of today. We all know that we need a mix of different media in order to maximize the return of our investments. On the left, you see a study from an American study from Analytic Partners, where they looked into 3,200 campaigns from 2010 till 15. And basically what you see from the slide is that the more media you add, the more impact you will get. I've seen the same conclusion from a Group M study based on Norwegian data. In the middle of the slide is an icon from IPA Effectiveness Award, and Binet and Field, they have done some work on that, and they conclude the same. In the old days, if you wanted to win an award in the UK, in the IPA Effectiveness Award, you needed 2 media groups. Today it's 6. Omnicom Media Group in Denmark back in 2018 concluded that the optimal campaign mix based on their Danish data was between 4 and 7 media groups. So on the right hand of the slide, you see a real case from Denmark. I have this article is from 2015, and the message was that if you were a telco operator as an advertiser, you should invest 70% of your media budget in digital media. Then a sales modeling company that had done a lot of sales modeling on telcos in the past 10 years, they tested this 70% rule of thumb and found basically that it would create half the sales compared to the current mix. So the right mixing of media groups really matters, and maybe the most advertisers need to do more sales modeling than they do as of today. The second type of mix I would like to talk about is the mix between brand building and activation. I found no study from the past 5 years that concludes we need to allocate more of the media budget into tactical activation. In fact, they all say the opposite. We are getting too short-sighted in our media planning. And there's even invented a word for it called short-termism. It presents a fantastic opportunities for smart advertisers, because if you find the right balance between brand building and activation and your competitors, they do not, then you will have a competitive advantage. So on the right side, there is a clip from an article on Kraft Heinz, and if you are competing with Kraft Heinz with their brands, you have had an easy task for many years. They were acquired by a capital fund that thought it was optimal to only use short-term activation media. And last year they did a massive write-down of the value of their brands, and it has now returned to a more sensible balance between brand building and activation. What the owners of Kraft Heinz forgot was to read the report, the long and short of it, by Binet and Field, and it was even issued before they acquired Kraft. It was launched back in June 2013. And what Binet and Field, they concluded was that if you want to maximize the return on your media investments, you need to balance brand building and activation. Across all categories, that they found that this 60-40 rule applies. 60% of your media budget should focus on brand building, which TV is the best medium at, and 40% of your media budget should focus on sales activation, which AdWords and emails are specifically good at, they found. They call the most effective campaigns for brand response campaigns, and it's not an either or decision. It is about finding what is the right balance for me as an advertiser. What Binet and Field also has found, that was in a previous paper, but they restated in the long and short of it, is that campaigns with an emotional message works better than campaigns with only a rational message. And in developing emotional messages, nothing is more powerful than creativity, and we all know that, and Arnaud talked about it as well. So just think about the cases that he showed, but here Binet and Field, they have put some numbers into it. And I know Alexander in a moment will show you more examples of how we as an industry can work more professional with creativity. Apart from the UK, where Binet and Field have done their work. The epicenter for great media research is currently also in Australia with the work from Karen Nelson Field, Byron Sharp, but also Mark Ritson. Mark Ritson, he's a marketing professor, and he writes in Marketing Week, as I showed you before, and he has a strong opinion about television as well. He says it will remain dominant and not die, as been predicted many times in this century. He predicts that in 10 years from now, the main advertising medium in the Western world. There are no credible alternatives to create attention among consumers in such a scale. There's no better platform to deliver creatively driven emotional campaigns. What we will see in this decade, if you ask the academic world, is that the TV and the internet will integrate. It will merge into one. In the end of this decade, we will not talk about Flow TV anymore. It's all the same. It's all premium online video. And then on the left of the chart is a graph from Thinkbox in the UK. It shows that 2/3 of the video viewing in the UK, that's from TV broadcasters. So it's those who are so great in delivering engaging stories. So we want to pay attention to the content and thus the advertising around it. The biggest challenge for advertisers is there are too many people within the company that do not know about the importance of advertising and creativity. The development is that more and more decision makers on the media budget to an increasing degree come from places like procurement, from the economy, CFOs, from IT, and so forth. And that's why some of the greatest brands like Adidas gets in trouble. Adidas, they basically found out that they didn't get this balance between brand building and activation right, and now they're working very hard to restore and find the right balance, and it has so far taken them 4 years. So it's not an easy task all of a sudden to change media mix between brand building and activation. Now we are in a recession, so I just want to talk about two cases that has a Danish footprint, and they're both in the book as well. These two advertisers, they have outperformed their category growth since the last recession. They have done it because they understand how valid media research work. Boots.com is basically a how brands grow story. Bolia.com is basically a balancing brand building and activation story. Both of them has understand the importance of both TV and creativity, and that's why they've been so successful in this decade. And I'm sure that advertisers that use this recipe, which is understanding great media research, using television and using creativity, they will also be successful or get out of this recession, be successful for the rest of the decade. So from here, it would be great to understand what creative excellence is. So over to you, Alexander.
I hope you can see both hear me, and see my screen here. So basically, what I'll end this presentation here with. Thank you so much, Henrik and Arnaud, both of you guys. Very, very exciting stuff. I will talk a little bit about how all of you guys can use research to help you ensure optimal effect from your communication investment, which of course right now is more important than ever before. So the first thing that we at Ipsos recommend is that it is really, really important to, of course, create cut-through. You need to cut through the clutter, cut through whatever media environment you're in. And here it is crucial that the cut-through created, of course, is based on a scenario that is as close as possible to real life. So not necessarily just asking, here we would like to really pay attention to this advert, but maybe create some more distractions, maybe a distracted media environment, if you will, and then base the research on that. At the end, this first step where we're showing the adverts is the basis of everything else that comes afterwards. So it is a crucial step. The next thing that is very important is that you observe the impact that you have on your brands. So on your brand. So not necessarily asking, what would this piece of creative in the future, perhaps not, persuade you to buy the brand, but rather observe what exposure to a specific piece of communication has when you look at effect on your brand. That is a crucial point as well. And then at the end, try to, of course, ensure yourself that whichever research agency you're working with ensures that they give you optimization recommendations. So it is, of course, important whether you're kind of, you're in a good place or you're in a bad place generally, but always request optimization possibilities. And this can happen in different ways through survey measures, but of course it can also happen through things like facial coding. So facial coding basically is that the only thing we do as a research agency, we ask the respondents in a screener if we are allowed to use their web camera. Some say yes, some say no. And those that say yes, we activate the web camera at the exact right time when they're watching the test ad. And we can get some really, really interesting non-conscious emotional feedback at exactly the right time using this facial coding. And all of this happens in their own living room using their own laptop. So I'm just going to show you an ad here. And it's an ad for Budweiser. And of course, it was crucial for Budweiser that this emotional ad that I'm going to show you, that they actually went through, the consumers went through the emotional journey that was intended by Budweiser. So let's check out the ad here.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. Just to be within the warmth of 1,000 miles, to fall down at your door.
So of course a very very emotional story, and honestly I've watched it a bunch of times now, and when the Clydesdale come there at the end saving their little friend, it kind of gets to me. So a little bit of chills every time. So really a successful emotional story in my eyes as a consumer here. So I'm just going to show you the results that we got from the facial coding. So this of course needed to confirm that we were in a good place, or Budweiser was in a good place with their advert. So the orange line here is the engagement, so the overall kind of emotional intensity, if you will, whether people were actually paying attention. We had the happiness curve here, the pink curve, and then we have a sum of negative emotions that we could observe in people's eyes and faces. So actually in the beginning, where we kind of set the scene in the ad, there's actually a kind of a downwards turn in engagement. People are not paying so much attention, and the happiness curve is declining a little bit. But then all of a sudden something happens. The puppy gets trapped in the car, and immediately the viewers start paying attention. So again, at a second by second basis, we can see that emotionally this part where the puppy gets trapped in the car actually does something for the emotions. The next thing is that the puppy actually escapes this truck and starts running around in open traffic. This is something that really increases the negativity. We as humans hate seeing a little puppy running around in traffic. So the emotional journey is very much strong here as well. When the puppy gets caught in a rain, the picture you can see up here in the right-hand corner, that is the happiness low point of the story. Completely down in the drain, this little cute puppy is sitting there like a homeless. But then the dog starts the journey home. Exciting stuff. The engagement in the ad starts increasing. The happiness in the ad starts increasing. And we can feel as people something is about to happen that is good. Then comes a little obstacle, a wolf emerges, and immediately the kind of the downwards going trend to the negativity gets an uptick. You know, all of a sudden going on here. And the same thing with the happiness, we have an upwards going trend, but as soon as the wolf emerges, you know, it stagnates a bit. But that, interestingly, doesn't mean that the engagement also stagnates. The engagement even increases more as soon as this wolf comes in. But then luckily, the Clydesdales, this very, very distinctive brand cue for Budweiser in America, they come to the rescue. You could say the brand comes to the rescue of this little dog, and everything after that is a positive story. So a very, very interesting case, I think, where we could help the client ensure that this emotional journey that they wanted to take people through was actually happening second by second. If you're advertising in digital media, let's take the Budweiser case here. Of course, then we need to catch attention. We need to, if it's in Facebook, we need to hold attention if it's in YouTube. And again, just going back, looking at the first 5 seconds, that's unskippable. This would have not necessarily been a good result. In the first 5 seconds, engagement is decreasing, happiness is increasing. So my imagination would be that this would not have been particularly successful had this been a pre-roll on YouTube. And that is exactly the reason why it is so crucial that when you're advertising on digital media, it is important, it is crucial that you test in that media as well, so we get that sort of insights. So a curve of viewer retention could look as I'm showing you on this screen. So we have the unskippable 5 seconds here at the beginning, and as soon as we can skip, you know, people start falling apart, falling away. They are on a mission. They want to watch, you know, the football highlights, the Oscar address, whatever they want to watch on, for instance, YouTube. And all of a sudden, this annoying obstacle comes, that is the pre-roll ad. And of course, it is crucial that that we respect that and don't show the brand for the first time over here at 10 seconds or the key message at 12 seconds, where we only have about 30 to 20 to 30 of our viewers left. So very, very important to test in the environment that you are intending the ad to be shown in at the end. So there are a few strategies, and I'm just going to show you 2 examples here of what you can do to kind of avoid this skip or delay it. So the first thing you can do is get as much as possible in within the first 5 seconds of the ad. So in this case, this is a Geico ad. It's actually a 1-minute ad, and it's a pre-roll. So thinking about that, you wouldn't recommend that necessarily, but look at what they do in the first 5 seconds here.
Don't thank me. Thank the savings.
You can't skip this Geico ad because it's already over. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Yeah, so basically this this kind of lasts for about 45 seconds more. And of course, people can watch if they find it funny, or they cannot watch if they don't. But the point is that within the first 5 seconds, Geico actually managed to give their brand and give their very most important message that you can save 15% or more on car insurance by switching to Geico. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. I think you get the gist of this big St. Bernards, I think it is, roaming around in this frozen living room environment here. Another strategy is making the first 5 seconds so attention grabbing that despite the mission that you're on, despite that you are about to watch the football highlights or whatever it is that you're doing on YouTube, this first 5 seconds you see as so captivating that you want to delay the skip. And I think this Pepsi Max advert here is a good example of that. Let's have a look.
And I have a French fry, as I mean the fruit cup. Oh. Hey, I thought
Pepsi Max, 0 calories.
maximum taste. Honey.
Yeah, so I guess you can think about the rest of the ad as you want, but I think it is at least trying to use some creative tricks in the beginning of the ad to kind of make you want to pay attention to the rest of the story, and that is another strategy you can go for. So we just want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for being nice to us and hopefully ignoring the few technical glitches that was, of course, unavoidable in these Corona times.